Chapter 2, The Inherited Blueprint. It would be easy to stop at the story, to look at a moment like the one under the porch and say, that's where it started. And in many ways, it did. But if you stay there, if you isolate that moment as the origin, you miss something deeper, something more honest, something more complete. Because the truth is, that moment didn't begin with me. When I went back and felt it, really felt it, not just remembered it, something shifted in how I saw it. At first, it was clear. That was personal. There was no confusion about that anymore. I wasn't minimizing it. I wasn't excusing it. I wasn't trying to dress it up in spiritual language to make it easier to digest. It was what it was, a moment of rejection, a moment of control, a moment where expression was met with removal. But after the emotion moved, after the tears stopped, after my body settled, another layer came in, not as a thought, as a knowing. My mother didn't start this either, and that's where the blueprint begins to reveal itself. The pattern beneath the person. When you're a child, everything feels direct. If something happens, it feels like, this is about me. And at that moment, it is. But as an adult, when you begin to look back, not from pain, but from clarity, you start to see something else. You start to see behavior is rarely isolated. It's patterned, conditioned, learned, passed down. My mother didn't wake up one day and decide, this is how I'm going to respond. She was operating from something she learned, something she experienced, something that shaped her long before I came into the picture. And that doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't soften it to the point where it disappears. It simply places it in context. Because if I was shaped by my childhood, then she was shaped by hers. And if she didn't process what she went through, then she passed it forward in the only way she knew how. Not intentionally, not maliciously in a calculated way, but unconsciously. And that's how most patterns move. Trauma doesn't end, it transfers. This is the part most people don't talk about clearly. We talk about healing, we talk about forgiveness, we talk about moving on, but we don't talk enough about transmission. Because trauma doesn't just sit still, it moves. If it's not processed, it gets expressed. If it's not felt, it gets acted out. If it's not released, it gets transferred. And that transfer doesn't always look like obvious abuse or chaos. Sometimes it looks like control disguised as protection, silence disguised as strength, criticism disguised as guidance, distance disguised as discipline. The form changes, but the energy stays the same, and over time, it becomes invisible, not because it isn't there, but because it becomes normal. What you inherit isn't just DNA. When we think about inheritance, we think about physical traits, features, genetics. But there's another layer, emotional inheritance. You inherit ways of responding, ways of coping, ways of expressing, ways of suppressing, ways of relating. You inherit what was allowed, what wasn't allowed, what was safe, what wasn't safe, and most of the time, you don't even realize it because it feels like this is just how I am. But when you slow down, when you start observing instead of reacting, you begin to see patterns, not just in yourself, but across generations. You start to notice the same emotional responses, the same relationship dynamics, the same fears, the same control patterns, the same silence, different people, different situations, same blueprint. The moment the pattern becomes visible. For me, that moment came after the release, after I felt what I never allowed myself to feel as a child. Because once the emotional charge was gone, I could see clearly. And what I saw wasn't just my pain. I saw the pattern. I saw how that one moment had shaped my behavior for years, and then I saw something deeper. That behavior didn't originate with me. That was the shift. Because now the question wasn't, why did this happen to me? The question became, what am I carrying that isn't actually mine to keep? And that's a very different question. Responsibility without blame. This is where a lot of people get stuck, because once you see the pattern, you're faced with two extremes. Blame. They did this to me. Excuse. They didn't know any better, so it's okay. But neither of those leads to freedom. Blame keeps you stuck in the past. Excusing erases your experience. The truth sits in the middle. What happened was real. It affected me, and I choose not to carry it forward. That's responsibility, not for what happened, but what happens next. The point where the chain breaks. This is the moment everything changes. Not when you understand the pattern, not when you talk about it, not even when you forgive it, but when you decide it stops here. Not as a statement, as a shift in how you respond, express, hold your boundaries, process your emotions, relate to others. Because the pattern only continues if you keep operating from it. The moment you choose differently, the chain breaks, not in theory, in reality. And that doesn't mean everything becomes perfect. It doesn't mean you won't be triggered. It doesn't mean you won't have moments where old reactions try to come back. It means you are no longer unconsciously participating in the pattern. Every life carries invisible threads. Threads of memory, threads of pain, threads of strength passed quietly from one generation to the next. For many of us, those patterns were written long before we understood them. But awareness is the moment the chain begins to break. Because the truth is this: you are not just the product of what happened to you. You are the alchemist who decides what those experiences become. Pain can become wisdom, fear can become courage, and trauma can become power. If this message resonated with you, if something in this story reflected your own journey, take a moment to support the channel, like this video so more people can discover it. Share it with someone who may be walking through their own transformation. And subscribe to Secrets of the Philosopher's Stone. And if you're ready to go deeper into this journey, you can explore the full story in my book, I Am the Alchemist, Transmuting Trauma into Power. The link to the book is waiting for you in the description below.